Howdy mates, good afternoon, how are we all doing? Here's a part 2 video. Right now I'm actually still at the Deer Prairie Creek Preserve, but this is the actual creek itself. So as you can see, Deer Prairie Creek is actually relatively small, as you can tell. Well, especially with it being in the dry season right now. But normally, like where I'm standing, this is usually all underwater right now, especially during the wet season. So, as you can tell, this is indeed fresh water. So, by no means does it have any salt in it. And if it does, it's at a very, very small volume. But with that being said, as you can see, there's even tannins in this water as well. But it actually is a bit more clearer, as you can tell. This is kind of like a little alluvial stream. Now, with that being said, this will also carry that Myakka fine sand, as I've mentioned before in the past, which is basically the state soil of Florida. And Deer Prairie Creek is essentially a tributary that will eventually empty into the Myakka River. Now, what's neat was they actually do have some kayak launches not too far from the preserve itself. So, potentially in the future, this could be another area where I could actually do some kayaking trips. Let's try to traverse through here. It's actually a little tricky. Just the way how this bank is set up kind of reminds me of Ohio a little bit. So right down there, that little cluster, those are actually water beetles. Now I can't think of the exact name of them right off the top of my head. In case if someone does know, please leave a comment if you can, for those who may actually know the name of the species. But what's neat about these particular beetles is they're always in a colony, so they're hardly ever solitary, and they usually do have quite of an appetite as well. Like there was a time I threw it was a small piece of a cracker, and like they went to town on it. So essentially, these guys kind of act as a decomposer for the stream. So if there's any, food material, whether it be a carcass, for instance, they're most likely going to eat it. But then usually though, when you move a little closer, they kind of do sense your presence nearby, and then they'll just start to move, like right now. But they are so cool. Wow. And they're fast. They're mostly skimmers, so they use a property called the van der Waals theory, which essentially means they have like a resin that's on their underside that doesn't really have them sink as easily into the water. Essentially, this resin that I'm speaking of, it's hydrophobic. It does not like to be absorbed by water whatsoever. Wow. It's peaceful over here. And it is off the trail, just slightly. And my contention is you can only access this during the dry season. Otherwise, this whole section here is most likely flooded. So I wanted to show you guys actually something cool. I almost walked past it. It's my bed. Okay, let's see. Just gotta traverse through here. Here we go. So of course, we have our cabbage palm, but now you actually have a really decent glimpse of something called a shoestring fern. So named for the fact that each individual frond looks like a shoestring. And it even has the texture of it too. But really what's neat about these particular ferns is there really aren't many others like it. And as a matter of fact, they're actually becoming more rare to find. So in a sense, this is good news to see that we have some alive shoestring ferns. Now, particularly with the fern, you have to look at its underside right here. You can't really see it from my camera, but you can see each individual spore, and they are tiny, like very minuscule. Like you'd almost need a magnifying lens to really see them. So you can only imagine that these produce probably quite a few thousand spores. Now, that's a neat thing about ferns too, is they're the only type of seedless vascular plant that really exists. I'm sure there are others, but they're the most prevalent. Now, what I mean by seedless vascular plant sounds a little complicated, but it really isn't. So, you saw, those fronds, that is made up of vascular tissue. So that means there's chlorophyll, there are also veins, even the other components that make up a plant cell, like the chloroplast, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. Like a cell wall. Yeah, that's like the outer boundary. That gives it the sort of the firm texture that you feel on the outside. Now, so they do have that vascular tissue, but then they don't reproduce by using seeds. Rather, as I mentioned, they use spores. Great example of, for us to think of spores, are fungus, right? Fungus in a way behaves very similarly. Fungus doesn't reproduce by using seeds. Rather, they have to release spores that will eventually establish in a particular spot and will eventually grow. But it's just quite remarkable that not all plants reproduce by seeds. Now, ferns are essentially some of the oldest type of plants that are in existence. I mean, they were even around when the dinosaurs were here. And even longer before that, too. So they really give us a glimpse of some of our ancient natural world. Don't mind me, I'm just looking at this stream here, just seeing what's going on. This has been like one of the only streams too where I've actually really had a chance to see some decent limestone. Now, I'm pretty sure some of this was actually added here just because of that structure right up there. That's what allows, when we're trailing, that allows us to go over the Deer Prairie Creek quite easily. So alrighty, you guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned some valuable interpretation of really how ferns exist. And especially the shoestring fern, which, as I mentioned, are becoming more rare to find. So, appreciate it, you guys. Hope you all enjoy your happy New Year's. And once again, Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya. And thanks for watching.